Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's National Inclusion Week webinar, Getting Started with myself, Arfan Bharti. I'm the Marketing and Member Communications Manager here at Inclusive Employers. I'm in my second month here, so this may be the first time you're hearing me or hearing my voice. I'm really excited to work with you all, particularly for National Inclusion Week, which is going to be a huge part of my job. So really excited to kickstart hopefully a lot of your planning today with this webinar. For those of you who don't know about National Inclusion Week, it's in its sixth year, and this year we're very pleased to say that Sky are our first ever partners for the event this year, who are really going to bring a range of positives to the campaign and will really help widen reach and celebrate the way they've embedded inclusion at Sky, and also share some of their successes. And we'll be hearing much more of them as we head into National Inclusion Week, which will take place in the last week of September this year. Joining me today and leading on much of the conversation and content is Richard McKenna, who many of you know, and if you don't, I'll give an introduction to slightly. I'll give an introduction to you slightly later on as well. So as I said, really excited for all of you to take part and be part of National Inclusion Week this year. We've had hundreds of organisations take part in it over the years, with a reach of at least 1 million employees within all the workforces, and hopefully today is the start of your planning for National Inclusion Week. A little bit of housekeeping before I start, actually. If you have any issues on any of the tech or can't hear us, please do let us know. Zainab, our office manager here at Inclusive Employers, is very kindly keeping a very close eye on the chat room. So any issues there, please do let her know on there. And if you can't see the chat room, feel free to call the office on the usual number. So we have a number of organisations here today, and this really kind of illustrates the reach of National Inclusion Week. And they're just a few examples of the organisations joining us. As you can see, we've got from Home Office, TalkTalk, Stagecoach, to name a few, and the list is growing. So if you haven't completely registered for National Inclusion Week, please do so late, but we'll provide details for that at the end. So as I mentioned, Richard is one of the founders of Inclusive Employers, which was founded in 2011. National Inclusion Week was founded by Inclusive Employers shortly after in 2012, and it's gone from success to success in every year. That's really had a really solid foundation with Richard's background in financial services, PR and communications, and he is available to speak at events during National Inclusion Week. The diary is filling up fast. We've already got some really good events lined up with some of our members for National Inclusion Week already. So the good news is that we have started National Inclusion Week planning with some of our members. The bad news is that maybe Richard is available less, but hopefully we can get around that today and illustrate how you can be empowered to achieve things yourself, as well as collaborating with ourselves. So just a very quick question before we get started. It'd be really interesting to know today. I'm going to go under this survey, which hopefully you'll be able to see on your screens now. That have you participated in National Inclusion Week before? So if you all kindly complete that very brief questionnaire that hopefully should be appearing on your screens now. There we go. Don't want the video. That's not what we want. I was trying to get the survey up, but not sorry. It's like we're having some slight technical issues on the survey, but not to worry. What we'll do is we'll come back to that slightly later on. In the meantime, we can quickly outline the objectives of today's webinar. So, and of course of National Inclusion Week itself. So, National Inclusion Week is really a way to celebrate practical everyday inclusion actions and everyday inclusion by the actions in terms of everyday inclusion. That's this year's theme for National Inclusion Week. And what we'll be doing as well as National Inclusion Week, the build up to that happens, we'll be giving examples of that via weekly spotlights, which will highlight areas of best practice that organisations and our members have been doing that can both inspire you and also enable you to celebrate some of the successes you've been achieving at your organisations. We'll also be engaging every organisation in the commercial and social opportunities of inclusion, as well as generating new ideas to accelerate the inclusion agenda. And that very nicely brings me on to my next slide, which Richard will lead and take away.
Brilliant. Hi everyone. It's great to be on the call and great to see so many colleagues and friends who are participating in National Inclusion Week again on the call. I can see organisations who are new to National Inclusion Week. Great to see organisations like Costain on the call. I can see friends from the Orkneys on the call. So National Inclusion Week is really going national. Please say hi if you know who you are. It's a really exciting time and it's brilliant to have Arfan on board to help steer. Firstly, I would like to say a huge, enormous thanks to Sky as our partners, because we're at a point 6 years in where National Inclusion Week is growing organically. You know, it's been super successful, but actually to help us reach more people and help more people understand the opportunity of everyday inclusion, Sky are pivotal in this, working with them. They're an organisation who are taking an imaginative, progressive and innovative approach to inclusion, and an approach that is simple, authentic and empowering. So we're really super pleased. I can see some comments coming in. Apologies if there's some sound crackling on the line. I think Zainab is looking at that for us now. So why National Inclusion Week? Where do we all start? So many of you will have been very focused if you're working in inclusion and diversity teams or other departments. We're working on making inclusion a reality every single day of the year, not just for the 7 days in September. And that's really key to what we're talking about. I mean, Arfan's been talking about a line of like 7 days of action for
365 days of traction.
I love it, Arfan. It's kind of, that's what we're doing. It's not meant to take away anything. It's just a moment to capitalize on all the brilliant, inspiring activity that's happening in organizations that is making inclusion business as usual. But actually, we need to take time to reflect and be inspired. A lot of us whose job it is to keep this agenda moving and dynamic is actually, you know, it's a moment to actually celebrate success and hear about successes in other organizations to get inspiration. This is my favorite slide for everything, because in most organizations I think that inclusion is loading, but it's buffering. You know, we kind of are in a process where energy and commitment sometimes falls aside. But if we really truly focus on the commercial and social opportunity of inclusion, we can't let this happen. We need to bring more people into the understanding of the opportunity of inclusion, that actually they are empowered to get on, be inclusive and make inclusion an everyday reality. So inclusion is loading, but it's buffering. National Inclusion Week is just 1 week of rebooting focus and energy for the year ahead, so that actually buffering is a thing of the past and loading is just continuous where we're going. So thanks, Arfan. Moving on to the next slide. So let me tell you a bit about National Inclusion Week and kind of where we're going this year. Essentially, it's our opportunity to dial up our activity, to kind of accelerate inclusion in our organisations. We know that many of us have loads of colleagues who are passionate, engaged and inspiring on all things inclusion. We also know that some people still haven't quite accessed it for whatever reason. They might not think it's about them. If we think back over years of kind of the equality and diversity agenda, lots of people have been left out of those conversations. Lots of people who thought, actually, that's about that group of people over there. National Inclusion Week is about all of us and about all of us getting involved in something that makes more creative and productive working environments for everyone. So this is our moment to accelerate the action and to engage more people with focus and commitment on equality, justice, and the commercial and social opportunities of inclusion. What we're hoping that during this week, that like in previous years, it is a catalyst for change in some organisations. We've got loads of evidence from members who actually started their inclusion and diversity journey. I appreciate the word journey is not everyone's favourite word, but I can't think of a better one right now. They started their inclusion and diversity journey by taking part in National Inclusion Week. It sort of liberates them from just focusing on protected characteristics. It's about all of us. And by taking part, they've then been able to start a wider dialogue and a wider conversation about all things in relation to inclusion. That 1 week of action develops thought leadership, innovation, ideas, actually psychological safety to talk about different things as well for the rest of the year. So we've got the evidence that proves it works from loads of organisations who used it as their catalyst for change, but we can't sit back on our laurels. We need to keep doing more, creating more action and doing more things. Action gets traction. So if we can just flip onto the next slide.
Great, thanks Richard. And so the next slide will illustrate kind of where we are in the timelines. So we're less than 3 months until National Inclusion Week, which isn't that far away at all, particularly when you consider kind of the August annual leave increase and things like that. So my question to you, Richard, now is how would you suggest people get started in terms of their planning for National Inclusion Week, and particularly how they get buy-in from colleagues and leaders to enable them to really have a successful National Inclusion Week?
Okay, so the first thing I would really recommend is actually a few slides back, the inclusion loading slide is a really good catalyst to help people understand that we need to reboot this activity constantly. So using something like that says that actually, you know, we're here, we're doing okay, but actually we need to get stronger, harder, better at this. So create something that is going to encapsulate the storytelling around where we are now. It could be kind of doing a maturity model around where we are now in terms of, you know, whether we're programmatic or whether we institutionalized our inclusion agenda. Then we need to get out and talk to people. So actually, the key thing is getting started with actually working out who's going to lead on National Inclusion Week and where. So talk to your staff networks. If you're lucky enough to have staff networks, we hope that we'll be doing an event for staff networks, potentially in central London during National Inclusion Week about networking the networks. Get your networks involved. One of the really good things that we're seeing organisations doing is engaging with leaders, and I use the phrase leaders really broadly. I'm not just talking about the CEO or the FD, or, you know, let's engage with the people who are leading in our organisations and who make change. If we can get time with them to explain about the commercial and social opportunity of inclusion and why National Inclusion Week is going to help us, then actually we can get their buy-in right now. One of the things one organisation is actually doing in relation to this is they've asked leaders in their organisations to keep diaries over the next month or so to talk about when they see inclusion in action, and they're using National Inclusion Week to talk about to promote the leaders' diaries, which are around everyday inclusion. So this is about that sense that actually leaders might be able to help people understand what inclusion looks like. That it isn't about great big initiatives, but it can be simple things, you know, making sure that somebody has an opportunity to speak in a meeting, perhaps considering, you know, the times that meetings take place. There's a whole range of different things that leaders can do, but getting leaders to own and to drive the agenda. The next thing is definitely around kind of signing up for the updates, making sure that you are accessing the materials through Inclusive Employers. So the website is currently being in the process of changing. There's more material coming soon, and there will be more guidance. The spotlights that Arfan's working on will, over the 12-week period, give you insight and ideas. But registering for those updates. What's been really successful in lots of organisations is actually to create a mini steering group. So, for example, Arfan and I were with one major member organisation yesterday, a global organisation, who've played a sort of fairly low-level role in National Inclusion Week in previous years. So they've done a little bit of work, but this year they really want to use it as that catalyst for change. And so yesterday we met with colleagues from engagement, internal comms, external comms, inclusion and diversity, and some colleagues representing some of the networks to say, okay, well, let's map out what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And they have got a week of activity, and within a couple of hours they had a week of activity planned and how they're going to communicate and reach out to different audiences across their organization. They're not just thinking about what's happening in their head office, but also thinking about what's happening in, and this organization has a huge number of sites in the UK, thousands of sites, what they're doing to support those people in working in those different sites as well. I think it's really important as well that everyday inclusion, because it is a very broad concept, we want people to focus on actually the simple things that we can all do that make people feel valued and engaged and included. So it's you can align this to your organisation. So if you've got a big focus on inclusive leadership at the moment, for example, or inclusive procurement, you can either align that through the work that's happening at Inclusive Employers on those areas or through your own personal work. I'm delighted to see that some of our level 6 colleagues, so we're currently running the first level 6 qualification in inclusion and diversity, and I'd like to welcome some of those colleagues because they are the inclusioneers driving the change in organisations. So welcome to those of you who are there. Establish your objectives, know what you want to achieve, what you're trying to do, and this sounds a bit dull, but I'm talking about be realistic about what's achievable. You know, it's not meant to take away from anything else. It's meant to add and build on those other activities. And we want to keep it accessible and fun. So that's how you can do things. So we're working with one organisation around inclusivities. So they're having kind of essentially one day that, a couple of days during the week, they're having tea together to talk about differences. So what do you want to achieve? Do you want to engage people in the social and commercial opportunity of inclusion? Do you want them to understand how they can do things differently? Do you want them to help them understand a particular corporate objective in relation to inclusion and diversity? So work out what you want to do, and then please engage with your comms teams. Arfan and I have been in a workshop this morning with comms teams from a range of member organisations around inclusive communications. Comms and engagement are our greatest allies in kind of making this a real success. So get up and going on that. If you are running events, and actually a lot of the activity will be events, whether they be live events or virtual events, you need to work backwards and create a plan of when you're going to advertise them and communicate with them on them. And start preparing the resources for them. You know, it's really good to see a sort of a blended approach during the week where there might be some webinars, there might be some lunch and learns, there might be some afternoon events. Talk to your L&D team about kind of what fits from their program as well, what's going on during that week. And also, you know, this isn't about territory, so there's also Wellbeing Week that's happening. See what else you can link it to. Make it kind of, you know, embed it into everything you can embed it into. Arfan mentioned if you need speakers for events, then obviously you can access them through Inclusive Employers, but you've all got really great networks, I'm sure, where you can find people who will inspire and engage to help people understand the opportunity of inclusion. So perhaps now have a think about, you know, who would set some good provocative challenges in your organisation on inclusion and diversity during the week that will help you drive and deep action in the year that follows? I like being provocative, so I'm happy to do it. But I know I can see on the line that we've got lots of provocative inclusioneers on the line too. So once you've worked out what you're going to do, and I kind of will give you more ideas of what people are doing as well, you need to advertise it, you need to publish it, and you need to start getting sign-ups. There's a really interesting sort of dialogue at the moment with some members about whether all events are kind of like drop-in, or whether we have people signing up and specifically to events, because obviously we want to maximize the reach and keep it flexible. If you're doing things like, so we offer mental health first aid trainers, for example, for some of our members. If you're doing those sessions where we need to make sure that people are signed up, you may need to ensure that they've got release from their managers or approval for budget for those activities. I would really like to say as well, in terms of external comms, make sure you're starting to think about how it links to your brand messages and what you're putting on social media platforms if you use them. I mean, we have some members who are absolutely fantastic on social media, and they really go to town during National Inclusion Week to tell the story of who they are as an inclusive employer. They use the tweet sheets that we've been using for a number of years about what everyday inclusion, and I just love all the tweets that come out through the week that say about the simple things people are doing to make me feel included. So that's a really great, get that lined up. Come on. Sorry, I was just going to say one other thing about films.
Yeah.
So we're just trying to work out how we can start to do. The reality of it is that as inclusion professionals or people who care about inclusion and diversity in your workplace, and that's why you're on the call probably, and why you wanted to drive this, we might have some insight into what everyday inclusion looks like, but lots of people don't, and it's our opportunity to help people understand that. So what we're currently talking about doing is whether we could do a sort of a competition or a campaign where people could submit a 60-second bit of footage, a raw film. It doesn't have to be particularly glamorous, about what everyday inclusion looks like in your organisation, hearing from different people that then we can share on the website and help people engage with, actually, this isn't rocket science. This isn't about actually that we're not, most of us are doing lots of them anyway, but we just can do a bit more. So we're going to come out to you to ask you to consider submitting a 60-second film around what everyday inclusion looks like in your organisation. And then, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this yet, but I'm going to say it out loud. Our fans looking very worried, because one of the events that we are really pleased that we're going to be hosting, am I allowed to say this? I've got to now, haven't I?
You've got to now.
Yeah, is we're going to be looking, perhaps we could potentially show some of these at an event that we're hosting potentially at FI. So imagine if you had a minute of, he's looking really worried and really angry at me now. You could have your 1-minute film shown at the BFI about what inclusion looks like in your organisation. But we also want to keep this real, and actually, I suppose it's an element of stripping it back to human stories about inclusion. I mean, we can all spin off our corporate messaging around why inclusion and diversity matters, but that's not what we're talking about. It's what people do every day that makes a difference. That's what we're interested in. So you could start thinking about making a film. So
someone's asking BFI. I think we were referring to the BFI. So that's the British Film Institute.
Yeah.
Who are based on the South Bank. So that's an acronym buster there.
And I better, because we've been doing this inclusive communication session all morning, and one of the things was about acronyms, so apologies for using an acronym. Please pick me up if I do it again.
And just to build on what Richard was saying in relation to National Inclusion Week, it's not just about what's happening in the office or on sites across the country, also encouraging organisations to do perhaps get as an opportunity to engage with communities, to better understand customers, and to better retail your products as a result. And to help that, we'll be spotlighting one of our members who's had really quite a lot of success in terms of engaging with their communities and thinking of inclusion outside of the walls of the office, so to speak, as well. And on Richard's point on being realistic, as he says, it could be everything from having tea with someone you don't usually have, or something much more specific. And as a result, this is something you can work on, I think, regardless of the budget. And perhaps when you're liaising with people in order to get the buy-in, rephrasing it slightly, because perhaps inclusion, even though it's at the heart of what we do, doesn't always necessarily translate to people. So whether it's rephrasing it to people in terms of breaking down silos or helping people work across departments more effectively, the advantages of inclusion in National Inclusion Week are much more, perhaps not much more than what meets the eye for the people you're trying to convince, or trying to convince the unconvinced, as they say. And lastly, the last thing I had to add was, I think one of my new exciting phrases I learned yesterday was in relation to when you're communicating about event activities or resources. Something I'd never heard of was the desk drop.
Oh yeah.
But so sometimes if you're worried about people reading your emails, or if you really push the event, I mean, this phrase was new to me, so it may not be new to all of you, but it's leafleting people, leaving their things on their desk to create that little bit of excitement as well. And we're really keen to work with you guys on all of that as well.
I think just picking up on that, it's about keeping it simple, though. It's like we don't need to. A desk drop is a very simple thing we can do to make sure that for colleagues in the office that we can reach them. Obviously, many organisations will use the landing page of their intranet to message around National Inclusion Week, and you can access the logo and all of that material from us as well. So if you want to promote it internally, just get in touch and we can send you that material to be in the pack. It's kind of using the quizzes and the materials as well, the simple things that actually get people to hook in and engage. And can I just one other thing about it? I also just want to reiterate that it's National Inclusion Week, and I feel, having mentioned the event at the British Film Institute, I want to focus on actually events that are happening around the country, because National Inclusion Week is about our colleagues everywhere. It's not just about being London centric. So we are trying to work out whether we can actually put a place where you can post the event and activities that you're hosting, so that we can really see that this is about people everywhere. It isn't just about what's happening in London or Leeds or Manchester, but actually what's happening in Warwick or Winchester, bit of alliteration there, to kind of make sure that we're reaching everyone, and even what's happening in the Orkneys, if that really is the person I think it is on the line from the Orkneys. Might say you if you are. Okay.
Thanks, Richard. And just to add on that, this is just what we're going over today, is just a plan to get started. I think as we go on, there'll be much more information through webinars as well as online and through other means in order to assist you. And then after that, what we'll be doing as well, in order for you to really sustain the momentum built from National Inclusion Week, we'll also be working with our members in particular on evaluating the impact of National Inclusion Week in order for your organisation to hopefully go bigger and better on it next year.
Are the questions coming in, Arfan?
I think Zainab is dealing with some queries at the moment. I think I was perhaps speaking a little bit further away from the microphone. I didn't realise how far away it was from me. I moved it slightly closer now, so hopefully, and I'm speaking slightly louder as well now, so hopefully that helps. If not, let us know. Great. So I know we've talked a lot about things perhaps through the lens of diversity inclusion broadly, and I know we've mentioned staff networks, but I suppose, Richard, one of the questions I had today was, what if an organisation on the line or an organisation that wants to participate in National Inclusion Week doesn't have an inclusion and diversity team, or doesn't have any staff networks, how they go about getting prepared for National Inclusion Week?
Okay, well, there are lots of you out there who don't have inclusion and diversity teams or staff networks, but it doesn't mean that you can't play a really active role, because I know people in so many organisations who may not be in an inclusion and diversity role or in a network, but who are passionate about creating a culture of inclusion and passionate about the opportunity for everyone. So lots of you will be aware of the model on screen, the RACI model about responsible, accountable, consulted, informed, and I'm going to talk through that in a minute. But essentially, it's about finding your allies to begin with. So spending some time to pull a group of people together who actually will work with you to make things simple. It's about setting some targets and being realistic in what you want to achieve. So remember that actually, if there is only 2 of you who are going to do something, and you've got an organisation of 1,000 colleagues, you have to be pragmatic about what can be done. Although there are some people out there who are just amazing at making activity and getting things done. I'm not one of them. I can just do bits. So perhaps the thing to think about here is actually work out, who is responsible, who's going to take ownership, who's going to carry out the process of getting prepared for National Inclusion Week. And I can imagine with on the call, it's mainly going to be you who are driving the agenda and driving the piece. Can I just at that point reach out our hand of support to say, yeah, this is one moment of a webinar to get started, but if you've got questions, phone us, pop in if you're local, or if we're somewhere nearby, come to a session. Who's responsible? Who's going to actually carry out the process or be responsible for the assignment? Then you need to think about actually who the person is accountable for the process. So it's really useful to find potentially a leader who's going to be your champion. So is it worth at this point going to a colleague and saying, actually, we want somebody to champion, we want somebody to make this happen? So who can you influence to make that happen? Who do you need to consult with? Who isn't going to actually be directly involved, but you need to get buy-in on the task? It might be that's you want to consult with your comms team to see how they can get involved. And who do you need to tell about it? Well, you need to tell as many people as possible about what's going on. So I would say find your strategic allies right now. Work out who's doing what, but don't make it too onerous. If if you haven't got a big team of people or staff networks to help you, be real. And then build a plan which actually links to one of the models that we use for the National Inclusion Standard. So think about actually how you want to engage with people. What are you going to do to make sure that they get what inclusion is about, or they get your objectives? In order to do that, do you need to look at kind of any systems and processes that are in place? What can you do differently? Are you going to equip them? Are you going to offer any training so that actually during the week you can help them understand the opportunity of inclusion? And going back to what Arfan's saying about how you're going to evaluate what we're going to do. So if you haven't got an inclusion and diversity team, don't despair. Actually, the reality is we need to get to points where we don't really need inclusion and diversity teams, that actually it's owned and accountable. People are living and breathing it on their own. They're running with it themselves. I'm sorry if I hope all you inclusion and diversity professionals don't mind me saying that out loud. I'm not trying to get us out of jobs, but I'm saying surely that should be our aspiration, where actually inclusion is an everyday reality, and National Inclusion Week is just one mechanism to make that happen. So find some allies, talk to them. You'll know who they are. Don't ask too much, but be really clear on what you're asking asking them to do. I think clarity is really key about this. Set 3 objectives, deliver 3 things, be real, be realistic. Consider the audiences that you're trying to reach. What do you want to achieve and who for? And get them to do as much of the work as possible is my other top tip.
Okay. Thanks, Richard. I think just to add a small point on that, on your information there as well, I think it'd be really good in the spirit of National Inclusion Week as well, if you were to approach 5 allies who could either come on board on your project or in your steering group, ask them to find 5 more allies, and particularly 5 more allies that you didn't know or you didn't have a working relationship with, or perhaps you weren't quite aware of how they could contribute to National Inclusion Week, and that will help hopefully reduce the workload for you a little bit. As I said, we're not trying to take you out of a job here, but hopefully this is going to be a really good team effort for you to collaborate with a number of people, and particularly people you hadn't potentially collaborated with before. And if so, go on.
Okay, just going to pick up. So a comment about building on good practice. So thank you for that comment. I absolutely agree. I think that actually, if we story tell about what's working, and actually, there'll be other models that you use to engage people internally. So look at what works internally and build on that. But then tell the stories of successes in your organisation as well. That will really help kind of build more people in. So make it positive rather than actually a big worrying issue.
Yeah, I think that touches upon David Bundy's comment in the chat room quite well. Can you see that from there, Richard? Yeah, in terms of this is also a moment to kind of pause and reflect on the achievements you have achieved as an organisation in the last year or so, so that we can. And that's what some of what the spotlights are designed to do. Highlight good things are happening, but let's create more of those good things. So, as I mentioned, we do encourage you to find 5 more allies to help you achieve a really successful National Inclusion Week. And hopefully, inclusive employers are one of those allies. So, Richard, I mean, what would you suggest? What would you say? What are some of the things that inclusive employers can offer us? Can offer organisations and members in the run-up to a National Inclusion Week or during the week itself?
Well, obviously, there's going to be materials and collateral that we produce that will be sent out for everyone to use. But then there's also, I mean, for example, with the member we were with yesterday, they're doing a program of everyday inclusion, which is drama-based learning. So I know I can see some other members on the call who've used a similar approach. So kind of making it engaging and energetic and lively to create a bit of buzz about inclusion using drama-based training. We will be doing some webinars. There are going to be the events like the inclusivities. We're trying to work out how we can make a little pack about how people can get together to have conversations. That really builds on kind of the theme from last year, which was Connect for Inclusion, where we asked people to meet with people who they don't know. It was exploring in-groups and out-groups. Meet with people who they don't normally meet with, to have a cup of tea with, to find out what's going on in their world and share some differences. There's going to be events that we're running around the UK. So if any members on the line who are interested in hosting events that are open events, please let us know. So we know we've got a few things booked in, sort of potentially down on the South Coast and in Leeds. I'm not sure that we can get ourselves up to Orkney for anything there for our colleague in Orkney, but we want to get out and about. So if you want to host something and you want to do something different, then please let us know. We can do some of that. The great thing is when we see organisations opening their doors to share best practice and inspire other local organisations. So, perhaps it's like extending out to your local network of, whether that's through local business networks or whether that's through sort of trade associations, to say this is what you're doing for National Inclusion Week and you're welcome to come along. What's really useful is to, and I feel like I'm banging on about it, is to have leadership buy-in, to get some of your leaders to say, look, this is really important. This isn't about theory, or this is about actually all of us engaging as humans to make inclusion an everyday reality. So if we can get leaders to tell some stories, we will be publishing blogs and stories from us, but actually that internally it's the blogs and the storytelling from your colleagues that will really make a difference and will help people understand that this is about being human. So I really encourage lots of that, but you need to prepare for that. So kind of write that into your planning. We are going to do some events. So we will have an event at the British Film Institute on one day. We're hoping to do an event for staff networks. We're interested in doing something around inclusive recruitment with some of our members who are looking about social mobility models and other issues around inclusive recruitment. One of our members is looking at kind of showcasing their inclusive procurement model, so how they focused on that, and this is about showcasing best practice. So the spotlights that Arfan's talking about will also form some of the content during the week. So we've been approached by about 12 members so far to actually they want to feature in spotlights. So for example, one member is doing a spotlight on their success around gender pay gap, which is a really great story to tell. Actually what they did, what they're now doing, and actually how they're addressing gender pay gap issues. Another spotlight is in relation to sense of belonging, being you at work. There's a spotlight potentially around mental health first aiders and creating psychological safety. There's a spotlight around kind of getting started on inclusion and diversity. So there's going to be loads of really inspiring information that actually can also form the basis of either roundtable events that you can run locally, or they can be events that you can access online. Just one other thing is we've got quite a lot of members who are in the process of either rebooting or recreating strategy, and National Inclusion Week is an ideal time to go to market with your renewed strategy, or your, you know, if it's about public sector equality duties, it's like looking at kind of what you need to communicate a message out about who you are as an inclusive employer.
Thanks, Richard. I found that really useful. I think one of the things in terms of being an inclusive employer member can help you prepare even more. And I think certainly one of the things I've found surprising since I've come into inclusive employers is the fact that a lot of you members aren't making the most of the training, consultancy, and resources we have so often. Perhaps that's not today's demographic of attendees isn't reflective of that, but perhaps it's been a frustrating thing for me finding out that not all are making the most of the training or consultancy, even the resources we provide, and that can hopefully help enable you to inspire some of your colleagues to get involved in National Inclusion Week, because we are able to offer you so much things as a default by your membership. And so, I mean, Richard, over the last few months and years of National Inclusion Week, what would you say being a member of National Inclusion Week can act as a catalyst, would you say, to preparing for National Inclusion Week?
So being a member of Inclusive Employers, well, I mean, the reality is that we want to widen the understanding of everyone in the UK about the opportunity of inclusion. So that's about what's in it for them and what's in it for our organisations. And what we see is that everyone's talent pipeline is everyone else's talent pipeline. You know, unless you're looking for something very specific, lots of us are changing jobs, changing careers, and changing organisations. If people join your organisation and they already understand that inclusion is the greatest opportunity for developing ourselves and innovating our business, then they are going to come into your organisation with energy and commitment. If they walk in and they say, this is an organisation where actually this is what we're about, they are going to be coming in with ideas and energy to innovate and do things differently. So as a super objective for society, that's what Inclusive Employers is about. It's about equipping people with that understanding and that opportunity to be the very best that they can be. Now, obviously, we want more people. We want members. We want people more organisations to join Inclusive Employers. But I can see on the line, there's loads of members on the line. So we want more organisations to join. But National Inclusion Week is not just about that. National Inclusion Week is about actually open source inclusion. And this year, with our partnership with Sky, we really have all a huge opportunity to reach people who may not understand or may be feeling excluded in the workplace, and help them to think differently about what we can do to involve, include, and inspire them to be the best that they can be. So I know that doesn't sound like probably not the commercial answer you want me to give, but that's the reality of it. Let's go back to what our social objective, what is our purpose? challenge inequality, champion inclusion. That's what Inclusive Employers is about. This is why national inclusion is really important, because it's our opportunity to help more people to be in environments where they are valued, respected for being who they are, and able to develop in a way that suits them and meets a business need. So I don't feel like I've been very salesy on that, but that's what I want it to be. That's what the vision is.
No, thanks, Richard. I think that brings us back in terms of what National Inclusion Week is all about, the kind of essence and the heart of National Inclusion Week, the fact it's everyday actions, and we're not necessarily after things that are too complicated. We want to highlight things and promote things and those everyday actions which can break down silos, can help people feel more included, can widen your talent pipelines, and much more.
And so actually, it help our businesses to innovate and do things differently. And that doesn't necessarily mean from a commercial perspective. That means from actually understanding that all of our stakeholders we're all more savvy as consumers. We want things done differently. We're all different. If we don't start kind of adapting and flexing, then actually we could be unintentionally excluding people from our products, services, and especially when we're a public sector organisation, for example, we need to be thinking differently about how we deliver the greatest possible service to communities.
Great. So we have 13 minutes left. We've got one more slide where we'll be going over top tips, and then depending on how many top tips we're able to get through, we may have time for a few questions at the end. I realise a lot of you may be either waiting to pop out for lunch or have gone for a desk lunch, but if you've got any questions which you feel we haven't covered in it, please feel free to write them down in the chat box now. If not, as I said at the beginning, I'm here and I've been hired to really go forward and work on National Inclusion Week in detail, and you can contact me via the info@inclusiveemployers.co.uk email address, which Zainab has kindly stated in the chat room. So as I said, please get in contact with me after today if we haven't covered what you think you'd like to get out of today's webinar, either in the next few top tips or previously, or by any questions you've had. So Richard, top tips.
Okay, right. What I'd like everyone to do right now is make a note of the leader in your organisation, or if you are the leader, take action. And we are all leaders, so take action. Who is the leader? Write that person's name down who will champion this for them, and approach them today. Say, National Inclusion Week this year is bigger, better, braver and bolder. And I will again credit thanks to our partner Sky for lots of that. Go to that leader and say, what are we going to do? We want to focus on making inclusion an everyday reality. Go to them today. Then, as Arfan says, write down the names of 5 allies who are going to support you. Approach them today. Work with. I know I'm asking you to do a lot today, like you haven't got any other jobs to do. But hey ho, that's yeah. If we don't ask, we don't get. So write down the names of those 5 allies who are going to support them. Approach them and get arranged a conversation, a meeting to say what are our 3 key objectives of National Inclusion Week 2018. If you need to, write a commercial case. So if your leaders don't get it, write a commercial case, and we can help you with that. There's loads of stuff in the members area around kind of the commercial business benefits of an inclusive culture. Focus on what you want to change and why, but keep it simple. I'd also say if you have if you have any comms experts around you, or you are a comms expert, develop a comms brief. So what the background is, what are the objectives, what the action plans, and what are your desired outcomes. And I also, whenever we're looking at focusing on desired outcomes, I also will be measuring any unintended outcomes as well. Because we know with inclusion, if we're talking about one particular aspect of inclusion, the likelihood is if we're developing an inclusive culture for one person, it's going to help others. There's going to be unintended outcomes. So I would also say, use your local networks. So how many of you are on LinkedIn? Start posting about what you're committed to National Inclusion Week on LinkedIn. We can send you the logo, you can post it out there, we can create a real local buzz and local focus, and then you can invite other organisations to get involved with you. Post it on Twitter that you're going to be taking part in National Inclusion Week. Start the conversation externally and get people hooked in. I want to say, write a plan, keep it simple, and keep the action easy. And that's really fundamental to this, because the reality is that everyday inclusion is about simple things. Don't get tempted to overcomplicate it and kind of make it too cumbersome. Make a plan, keep it simple, keep it easy. But at the same time, be brave, be bold, be bodacious. Be prepared to step out of comfort zones and do things differently. I think it kind of it goes back to the write a plan and keep it simple, is be pragmatic. Is that, if you've got 4,000 people in your organization and you want to engage with everyone, we have to accept that actually that's a super hard task. Be realistic and pragmatic about what you can do. The top tip that is always my top tip for my team here is that we all need to get lots of sleep, because National Inclusion Week is exhausting. It's exciting and exhausting, and in the run up to it, rest, be prepared, use some cognitive strain to check the decisions that you're making around National Inclusion Week. And this also feels a little bit, I'll just say, don't make it too social. So just watch out that kind of the events don't tip over into just like things that feel like just social event. I mean, obviously we want to socialize, but we pull things back to actually, and I mean, when I mean don't make things too social, I'm not interested in kind of people hanging out in pubs or, think about including everyone and wire everything back to the what's in it for your colleagues and what's in it for our organization. So help people understand that actually what's in everyday inclusion for them and what's in it for our business if you need to. So they would be my 10 top tips. If you want me to put them in a an email out, that would be that's cool. Just drop us a line, we can do that.
So we've had a question from David Bundy asking when daily challenges will be issued. So for those of you new to National Inclusion Week, or for those of you who didn't take part in the daily challenges last year, Richard, would provide a little bit more information in terms of what the daily challenges were. I think we're still talking about when we're going to release them this year. I know Zainab said on the chat room that they're daily challenges, but I think we have had feedback from a couple of organisations who've stated that perhaps they'd like them slightly before, just to give them some room with planning. So they're still kind of finalising when and how we can release them. But essentially, we want to make it as easy for you as possible, because we understand sometimes having a challenge land in your inbox and then being asked to follow it through isn't sometimes the easiest thing to do. But we're definitely working on that. And one thing we haven't mentioned so far in the 55 minutes of this webinar so far, and something that has been quite a recurring word in the conversations I've had with Richard and the members, is have some fun. That's one of the things we're really looking forward for you to be doing in your organisation, is to really kind of break out and think about this as a fun activity, not thinking of inclusion and diversity as a box ticking, punishing exercises which you're asking your colleagues to take part in.
It's the best gig in the world. But can I just clarify one thing about the daily challenges? So in previous years, we've actually sent them out on the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday of National Inclusion Week, which we thought was great in terms of getting like innovation and ideas. But the feedback is organisations saying, can we have them like either 3 weeks ahead or a month ahead? They will be coming out and ahead of the week. It might be that you, as the drivers on National Inclusion Week, keep them up your sleeve, and you might do some preparation around them, but you might launch them internally on the day. It's up to you, but you'll get them you'll get them I'm looking at Arfan.
Yeah,
for a
I
date,
think we were still to confirm, but as I said, we'll make it as easy for you as possible and as early for you as possible. So daily challenges to be achieved daily, but maybe circulated before. So it's 25 past 1. We're 5 minutes ahead of schedule. I'll give it another 10 seconds for anyone to have any final questions. If not, we are going to wrap up early.
Yeah,
that's okay
cool.
with you, Richard? Any final questions? I'll hold for a few more seconds, but I don't see anyone typing. So,
Jacqueline, I can see you said you like the idea of the inclusivities. If you've got any ideas of how we can make that more of a reality, that'd be great to talk to you. Give us a tinkle. I mean, I think it is exactly, it's those simple things about helping people to connect with each other and talk about simple things that make inclusion an everyday reality.
Great. So that just takes us onto the final slide up to date. Hopefully you have these contact details on you if you've accessed our webinar, but if not, here's a reminder of our details. Please get in touch with us as much and as soon as possible, because we're well within the planning weeks and less than 3 months of National Inclusion Week, and we really and me particularly, being my first National Inclusion Week and Each Inclusive Employees, I'm really looking forward to working with you on this.
Please, I see wonderful Yenny at National Grid has just sent her details. She is a pioneer on inclusion, so you're getting a shout out here, Yenny. She's also one of our level 6ers, so absolutely driving inclusion in her organisation and outside her organisation. Please link in with Yenny. Please link in with, it's about creating a network of people who are driving change on inclusion. Please link in with us, Arfan and I. You can easily find us, and also with Inclusive Employers. Tell us what you're doing is really important. We want to celebrate success, inspire, engage, and motivate people for the rest of the year to keep focused on building, making inclusion an everyday reality.
Great, thank you for joining, everyone.
And final thanks to Sky. Bye-bye.